The moment the music stopped, so did her heartbeat. Everyone turned toward the altar where the groom, handsome, confident, and cold, slowly shook his head. The air that had been filled with laughter and celebration turned heavy, suffocating. In her emerald green gown, Anna stood frozen, her trembling hands clutching the bouquet of white roses that suddenly felt like thorns in her palms. The whispers began spreading through the crowd like wildfire, cruel and sharp. And then, in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, the groom said the words that would break her heart forever. "I can't do this. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of true love that sees beyond appearances, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like these remind us that love can be found in the most unexpected moments. And sometimes, heartbreak is just the beginning of something beautiful." The silence that followed his rejection was deafening. Anna's world tilted, the edges of her vision blurring as humiliation settled deep into her chest. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the earth beneath her feet. Her family, seated in the front row, stared in shock. Her mother covered her mouth, trying to hold back tears, while her father's hands clenched into trembling fists. The guests exchanged looks, some pitying, others judgmental. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. The sun had risen warm and bright over the countryside, blessing the open field where the wedding was to take place. The archway was decorated with wildflowers, and the scent of lavender and daisies filled the air. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. Jason, her groom, had always been charming. When he proposed 6 months earlier, Anna believed her fairy tale had finally begun. But deep down, she'd always known he was a man who cared too much about what people thought. He loved the way she made him feel, but not enough to love her completely. Not enough to stand by her when others whispered that she wasn't the right size for him. And today, in front of everyone, he proved it. Jason turned away from her, his expression unreadable, and muttered something about not being ready and not wanting to live a lie. His words cut like knives. Anna's throat tightened as tears blurred her eyes, the mascara running down her cheeks. The music that once played softly now felt mocking. The photographer had stopped clicking. Even the breeze seemed to have stilled. A murmur rose among the guests. Someone whispered, "I knew this would happen." Another voice said, "Poor girl. She should have known better." Every whisper stabbed deeper, every glance burned hotter. Anna dropped her bouquet. The petals scattered over the dusty ground like fragments of her broken heart. She could hardly breathe. Shame flooded her, and she turned to run, but her legs felt weak. The field that once looked so beautiful now stretched endlessly, trapping her in the center of everyone's gaze. Then, out of the crowd, a man's voice cut through the murmurs. It was deep, steady, and calm, like the voice of the earth itself. "I'll marry her." Heads turned. From the back of the crowd, a tall cowboy stepped forward. His hat shaded his eyes, but the sunlight caught his strong jawline and the quiet determination in his expression. He wasn't dressed for a wedding, his boots were dusty, and his shirt was worn, but he walked with a confidence that made people move aside. Anna blinked through her tears, unsure if she had heard correctly. The stranger stopped before her, meeting her eyes with a softness she hadn't seen in a long time. "No woman deserves to be left standing alone like this," he said quietly. "Not today." The crowd gasped. Jason scoffed, muttering something under his breath, but the cowboy didn't even glance at him. He looked only at Anna, as if the rest of the world had disappeared. Anna shook her head, stammering, unable to understand why a stranger would offer to take her place in this moment of heartbreak. But as she looked into his steady, kind eyes, something inside her cracked open. For the first time that day, she didn't feel small or broken. She felt seen. The officiant hesitated, unsure what to do. The guests murmured, some shocked, others curious. Anna's parents looked bewildered, but in their eyes, she saw a glimmer of something, hope, perhaps, or gratitude that someone had saved their daughter from total humiliation. The cowboy turned to the crowd and said, "A man who leaves a woman because she doesn't fit his idea of beauty doesn't deserve her. But I'll tell you what I see. A woman brave enough to love, strong enough to stand, and beautiful enough to deserve the whole world. The crowd fell silent. Jason's jaw tightened, his pride visibly stung, but he said nothing. Anna's tears kept falling, but now they were different. Tears of confusion, disbelief, and something else she couldn't name. The cowboy extended his hand toward her. "You don't have to say yes," he said softly. "But don't let this be the moment that defines you. You deserve better than to be left standing alone." The sun peeked through the clouds, casting light across the field, and in that light, Anna saw something she hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Maybe love didn't have to come from the person she thought she wanted. Maybe it could come from somewhere unexpected, like a stranger who refused to let her heart be broken in front of the world. Slowly, she took his hand. The guests gasped again. The officiant, trembling slightly, asked if she wanted to continue the ceremony. Anna hesitated, looking at the man who had stood up for her without hesitation. She didn't even know his name. But in that moment, she realized something powerful. She didn't need a perfect wedding or a perfect groom to feel worthy. She just needed to reclaim her dignity, her strength, and her worth. With a small, trembling voice, she said, "Thank you. But not today." The cowboy nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "Then walk away proud," he said gently. "You don't owe anyone your tears." Anna straightened her back. For the first time since the morning began, she didn't care about the stares. She lifted her chin, held her head high, and walked down the aisle. Not as a rejected bride, but as a woman who refused to be defined by rejection. The crowd parted for her, and she could feel their silence shift, some with guilt, others with awe. The cowboy followed her to the edge of the field. She turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. "Why did you do that?" He smiled faintly. "Because someone once did the same for my sister. And because you deserve to be treated like someone's choice, not their compromise." Her lips quivered into the smallest of smiles. "Thank you," she said again. He tipped his hat. "Name's Luke," he replied. "You take care of yourself, Anna." It wasn't the beginning of a romance, not yet. But it was the beginning of healing. Days passed. The story spread through town and everyone had an opinion. Some said the cowboy had embarrassed Jason. Others whispered that Anna must be heartbroken beyond repair. But Anna didn't listen to any of it. She spent her days walking through the fields, letting the wind wash away her shame. Every night she thought of that moment, the way Luke had looked at her not with pity but with respect. Weeks later, she saw him again at the farmer's market. He was loading hay onto a truck, the sun glinting off his sweat-damp hair. When he saw her, he smiled, and something inside her melted. They talked for hours that day, about simple things, about loss, about courage. And slowly, over time, friendship turned into something deeper. Luke never once made her feel like she had to change. He admired her strength, her laughter, her kindness. Where Jason had seen flaws, Luke saw beauty. Where others had judged, he cherished. Months later, standing on that same field where she was once left alone, Anna found herself smiling again. This time there was no grand wedding, no crowd, no white roses. Just a quiet sunset, a few friends, and a man who looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman alive. When Luke asked her to marry him, he didn't kneel on one knee or use fancy words. He simply took her hand and said, "You once walked away with your head held high. Now I'm asking if you'll walk beside me for the rest of our lives." Anna's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy this time. She nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "This time, I'm saying yes." And when they kissed, the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the field in gold. There were no whispers, no judgment, only peace. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to help more people believe in kindness, courage, and the power of second chances. Love is not about perfection. It's about respect, empathy, and the bravery to stand by someone when the world looks away. Before you go, comment below. Real love sees the soul, not the size. Because sometimes, The most beautiful love stories begin the moment someone decides that no one deserves to stand alone.